what I speak today, as Jonah requested to us for the let's be inspired by our food and the planet, and smart foods and the smart approaches. So here I've just talked about a bit of a features, the food outlook and smart food, agroecology, resilience, post-COVID landscape, the true hunger and biodiversity, employment, conscious living and planetary health. I try to cover, I guess it's in 45 minutes, and most of my presentation is mostly a lot of the pictures and slides. So as I always follow the option that pictures tells 1,000 words, so that even speak little and not cover everything, but I'm sure that a slide will say that. So we are very clear that we are on the midst of the crossroads of the global food systems, and we do not know where we go, where we should move away from the yield-centric to the nutrition-centric, or we should move away from balancing the food systems. But overall, we are eating mostly the wrong types of the food at the cost of the nature and sustainable living. So this is where the planetary health and sustainable living and wellness become a key option for the future development. And the COVID is already given us a good lesson that just the food and the calories is not enough, but nutrition is going to the biggest the role is going to play. And as recent the World Food the Prize won the Nobel Prize, and director speaking about that, the medical solutions may wait and take time, but let the smart food be the first solution. So food is going to play important role in every aspect of our living. This is where I talk a bit about when we move into the COVID as a kind of the global tragedy and consequences of the way we eating the food and disposing and our lifestyle. And one of the best advice come that eat right, and that is one of the advice coming from all the experts. So always the focus on eat fruits, vegetables, legumes, millets, and nuts and whole grains. I'm sure that most of the talks in this the food tech talking about the smart food focused on these things. And I always the ancient look on the health is wealth, and this is how we focused on health is the step of the complete wellness. But often we skip the ecology, and it's so interlinked. The wellness and ecology is so interlinked each other. So we have to look into that how the food is going to play a biggest role here. So when looking at the health is a continuum of the living soil, that is the best of the ecological principles, and the plant and humans and animals, a smart food that connect the continuum. So this is where the way we produce the food, the way we consume, they are so interlinked each other. So when I look very deep into as healthy food, it basically is linked to the every aspect of the sustainable development goal, whether you can take it to the nutrition, zero hunger, carbon neutral, climate change, and employment generations, and health and wellness, everything that is food play the important role, and why it is so important us to be focused on the smart food in these days. When it comes to the health, that is the COVID really that taught us the lessons, and also the eating, the malnutrition and overeating. And vital food is going to play the important role. I'm not talking about all the other aspects, but let's focus on the food here. So the last 30, 40 years, the research in agriculture, we focused on removing the poverty and meeting the feeding the billions of the people, especially the hitting towards the zero hunger. In that sense, we always focus on the yield and the calories. But we are often neglect the nutrition and resilience and sustainability and carbon neutral. This is really brings us back to the thinking about the smart food as a vital food for addressing those gaps. Just looking into the two types of the impact we have in terms of the lack of the nutrition, lack of the calories. One part of the world, we are still struggling to reach the minimum meal calorie required to sustain, and other side is eating the too much calories but lack of the nutrition. So basically we are addressing about malnutrition. There's so much of the hidden impact. This is where I call it as a twofold hunger. It doesn't mean that I'm eating the too much of food. That is always the good. It is always the lack of the nutrition. So this is where we need to tackle in the new era of the food systems. And this is where we can bring back to the change in demographies. And we are migrating a lot of the people to urban. And it's expected that by 2030, the 60% of the world population is living in the urban. And most of the poor people spend nearly half of their income to buying the food in one side of the world, and other side, and rich people, they're spending half of their income on the medicines. So it's so much of the what's called intricative diversity in terms of the food and the nutrition we need to address. When I recent the Eat Lancet, the Commission report on the nutrition, and current food systems and planetary health is completely imbalanced. This certainly demand for the balanced agroecosystem that strengthen the smart food and the ecological security. This brings us really the recommended amount of the plate. We should have the more fresh fruits, vegetables, and cereals, millets, and the pulses that are always called forgotten pulses and trees, nuts. So when looking to the present, the food systems and how they are outside of the planetary health, we need to bring back within the planetary boundary. This certainly demand for the bringing back what we call the biodiverse, diverse nutrition food. This is where it comes to the smart food. And that is, I'm sure like a journalist, you can talk on the hours together on the smart food. What is smart food? It's resilient, nutrition rich. It is it meets the demand of the body and the mind, and all that brings us together. Why, where we can grow, how this you can meet the demand of the food nutrition. It comes to the farm diversity and the crop diversity. This again coming back to the why the intensified farming systems need to be diversified for all the forgotten foods, the millets and legumes. So not only that, because of the immune systems, gut biome, it's linked to the diet diversity. It's all links together each other. So that we have to innovate that how best we can bring this forgotten food system back into the systems. And that required a huge strategic way to deal with it, not just only the producing the food, but changing the tongues of the people, elite people in the living urban cities, how they can change into the food systems. So this is also brings back to our resilience, the building the resilience, and resilience not only just on the rely on only the choice of the species or the crops, but also building together in the network. And it should be the good soil, crop diversity, rotations, organic matter, fungi, what we call a water holding capacity, resilience to building that. This required fixing the broken food systems that need sowing the seeds of the resilience in the people's hearts and the tongues that bring the forgotten taste into them, how this really the food systems really help. That is where we required a changing a diet pattern and the cropping systems that towards the sustainable living. And we look into the plant-based versus the animal-based. I'm sure that we'll learn the lessons on that. How we need to shift a paradigm from yield-centric, we always yield-centric and economic model to the nutrition-centric, and that is the health of the people, planet, and the entire creations, while using the natural resources and very consciously. This is where we need to have this the smart food systems. We need to bring it back, and this is where the resilience is built into the smart food systems. And just looking to not only we look at the resilience alone in terms of the diversity, but also linked to the agrobiodiversity. And there is so much of the species in the planet, and that is edible in nature, but only the few crops dominated our plates and our food systems, our ecosystems. We need to bring back that diversity. Just take example of the forgotten pulses. Nearly 65,000 landless is grown alone in Asia alone. And just the come across so much of the diversity. When I go back to my villages and the past, how our the grandparents and used to eat so much of the pulses, but we almost lost all those pulses in the era of the Green Revolution. Of course, that is required to meet the nutrition, the food demand. but we lost the huge amount of the crop diversity. And not only that, the diversity linked to our nutrition, but also the overall ecosystems and the planetary health. And just I give you the one quick example here. I just took two examples of the the smart food. We can consider one from Asia and from in Africa. And underutilized crop species, neglected species, minor crops that plays an important role here. I just look into the theft of the Ethiopia highlands and the horse gram in the drylands in the arid climate. And these two species, they can survive in any kind of the harsh conditions, whether heat wave or the drought and pests and diseases. One beauty of the horse gram is that even there is a lack of the soil moisture, it has a capacity to absorb atmospheric moisture, then send the moisture back to the root systems. This is how they play the important role, but we never explore this potential. So that I can go to the supermarket here, I can get to about 10 types of like 100 types of the pasta from Italy, and about 50 types of the rice coming from the India, and even like different types of the corn, bread, meal, it's coming from the Mexico, but I hardly find any millets in the supermarket. This is where I see that we need to stimulate the demand and expand the affordability. And how the smart food is just not only the building the productions, but the producing the different recipes into that, how people can eat it. Many people even not know how to eat the horse gram or the millets. And there is no one understood that the required of the soaking of at least 6 hours of the millets in order to benefit all the nutritions. So this kind of the awareness you need to bring into that. So this first you need to create the stimulate the demand one side, but make sure they expand affordabilities. So this is what I saw one of the presentation by the Marco from the World Vegetable Center is speaking on that. And we always we can create some short demand, then suddenly the increase in the productions, then you're not able to balance that. So that this is required to bring that huge potential into the populations. So this is where the future foods, the smart foods, they're looking to diversified agroecosystems and build into the local intelligence, how to cook, how to preserve them, and also to explore this indigenous wisdom of the eating the smart foods. Because of when I look into the traditional system of people even may not understand that when they're eating the brinjal, there must be the tur dal with the brinjal, then only you can get the benefit of the both. But often many, they lost the wisdom in the modern food systems. We have to bring that back to the systems. So not only that, the agrobiodiversity, like lost of the varieties of the foods and varieties we lost in the expansion of the intensification of the systems, no cropping. This is required to bring that the lot of the tolerance varieties and germ plants that really the high potentials in terms of the connecting the urban periphery to the rural economy, and always our food systems built in such a way that it is ecologically viable and economically sustainable model. And this is where the growth potential is so high in the smart foods, and that really helps us to reducing our carbon footprint and water footprint, and even like a land footprint and the amount of the food required. And I'll come back to why it's so important to the connecting this to the rural and urban, the linkages in order to bring the food systems. This is, I see that the organic potential is so high in the producing the food, which is the chemically free. I just to give you an example of, I was in the Delta the last the week, and I bought a few the cabbage, the big heads of the cabbage, the farmer sitting next to the selling the cabbage. I just took the few leaves, I removed that one, I put into the donkey. His donkey immediately rushed to me. No, don't feed the cabbage to my donkey. I just, why it's that? No, it's a lot of the pesticide here. So I not want my donkey to eat this one. But you are selling it to me. And so, sir, he gave a simple answer that my Arabic friend translated that one, what the farmer telling that. He is ready to sell the produce without the chemical, but there is even small hole in the vegetables, no one is ready to buy. So I have to force to the spray the chemicals to keep the pest away, so that there is no the holes in the vegetable, so that market the people buy that. So this is the irony that we are one side we are requesting for like a food should be chemical free, other side we request asking that food should be looks nice and very beautifully, and there is no insect in that. The simple logic I'm telling that to the smart food systems that if the insect eating your food, that means it's fit for you. So this is where we need to bring the diverse choices of the food with great flavor, taste, and nutrition is possible only. We can increase our diversity in the food. And the space is no limitation, certainly. You can grow the smart food everywhere because of, and then the thing comes to the neglected species, like for example, millets and pulses. We always push them to the like a degraded lands, less resources. We can always put the high demand crops like a wheat and rice and corn into the very fertile soils, and you remove all the millets into the neglected soils and the less in the resource utilizations. And this is then we compare that, oh, millets yields are less as compared to the coarse grain cereals because of this is how we are pushing our management practices. Even they provide the same options to what's called equal opportunity for the millets and the main grains. They can beat the other production systems so vastly. So this is that brings back to the where the potential of the growing this kind of the food. There is vast amount of the dry lands, and when the food grown under the stress conditions and in the dry conditions seem to be the high nutrition than too much of the water applied. You can eat the greenhouse cucumber versus the open field cucumber, you can see the taste and difference. And there is huge potential of bringing this into the entire dry areas of the world. I call the desert potentials, in the dryland potential, bringing this to smart food. And this is where we can bring the sustainable futures. Just take example of the amount of the food we lost in terms of the diversity. And nearly 80% of the food diversity lost in the last the 70, 80 years. And we can go to the market. You can hardly find any of these, the diversity of the food in the market. Only get a few types of tomatoes, a few types of vegetables, a few types of the pulses. And used to grow nearly about the 120 to 130, the main the varieties of the pulses. Now hardly you can count them by 12 to 15 types in our own village. This really brings back the diversity. And not only that, it is bringing the diversity for the entire landscape, but diversity in our gut biome, because that required a different, the kind of the food elements. For example, you can skip the black gram, and doesn't mean that I can just replace something else, but there is a certain bacteria, gut biome, rely on the particular black grams. So this is like that we need to have, as predicted that, as estimated, nearly we need about 300 to 400 food elements month in order to keep our gut biome healthy. Sorry. This is where we need to build that connections between the gut biome and the gut, where the pulses, millets, they play the big role. These are the high, the protein and as well as the fiber. This is the real mean for the most of the gut biome. And it's not just only our emotions, everything linked to our gut biome. This is where we can bring the food diversity. Other things, the very critical is we often think about the lot of the food wastages and where the food wastage happens. It's most of the food the wastage happens in the consumer level, and often that linked to the lack of the nutrition. So it's very high interlinkage between nutrition and the food waste happens, because of when we are eating the junk food or like a less nutrition density food, and our body cells triggers like mechanism called asking for the more food, and we end up in eating the more food frequently, so that always they call a belly full hungry cell. This is the one of the mechanism we have understood very well. I think this is where the smart food play the important role. When you eat the millets, and you won't get hungry for at least about 6 to 7 hours, but you can eat the refined flour, and you can get hungry quickly because of there is no nutrition in that food. So this is where we need to address that the smart food dimensions is not just only the growth and productions and consumerism, also the entire the health system itself. So I just giving the few example of the job, the growing pieces of cultivating healthy eating and sustainable living. This has to be start from the school itself, and that's where the connections with the nature and is so essential to bring back the forgotten food systems. Always I say that the best investment parents can do for their children is start taking them to the nature, and this is where nature they can learn how the food grown and how the systems evolved. And this is where the future of the farming systems revolve around our new generations taking on the nutritions and the play so vital role in the producing the food systems itself. When I was in US and in small home gardens, we can producing so much of the food. 8 by 8 square feet can grow about nearly 10 types of the vegetables, enough to feed a family. When I think about it, how come that this small, the intensive system and everything is in the growing the symbiotic and the companion planting, they produces so much of the food in little resources. And how best you can bring this model into the main farming systems. This is where I started exploring from my core remote sensing and modeling to the whatever you're doing in the space. But I understood that whatever working on the model based and space level things, we need to go down to the ground level and understand how this mechanism bring back to the food diversity. Not only that. Even the small diversified landscape, still the smallholders feed the 80% of the world, and all the nutrition food still coming from the smallholder production systems. And so much of the varieties of vegetables you can grow in the small farming system dynamics. And the same thing applies for the number of other crops. And this is where we need to bring back our forgotten food systems and wild relatives. So much of the food in our germplasm setting, look at all the ICR, National Germplasm, huge amount of the germplasm system. I just was looking the other day with our own germplasms. They're just looking methi, this fenugreek. We are eating so much of fenugreek, and I never knew that 360 types of the fenugreek varieties available, but you hardly know the 1 or 2 growing in the main market. And the same thing happening with our, whether take the cereals, or pulses, or vegetables and fruits. There's so much of the genetic diversity is unexplored. We need to bring back to the main farming systems, not only grow into the monocropping and individual cropping systems. I'm just demonstrating it to I understand the urban people, how this multi-layer farming should work like that. Just to give you an example of the different level of the systems, how the nature in the jungle can work, the same system adopted in the so high density of the compound farming system. And when the small 8 square feet of the box during the lockdown and produces so much of the fruits and vegetables, especially the greens in the salad greens. And I thought about why can't we take this model into the main farming system, especially in Africa and Asia, the farm holding are so little. And most of the things like vegetable consumption is still very little in most of the part of the world. We are eating less than 10% of the recommended 50% of the vegetables. That means we are not eating the diversified food at all. And we should learn from especially like Japan. They are one of the last 30 years, one of the most highest vegetable consumptions in the system. They are become so healthy. In contrast to the US, we are eating the less vegetable. And if you look at the world average, we're eating less than 8% of the vegetables, and the diversity in the food. We're mostly dominated by the only few crops. This is where I think the smart food bring the revolutions, and also not just only the food, but also the habitat to the so much of the diversity losing. And recent analysis showing that nearly about 60% of honeybees lost its colonies, and nearly 70 to 80% of the invertebrate species lost in the modern farming systems. And this, in order to bring back all the loss to the biological diversity, we need to change our food the way we're growing. And whether it can be the small scale in the rooftop garden or in the large scales, and health become a priority in terms of the food we grow and the produce. And this is where we need to move towards into the wellness. It's not just wellness for the human beings, it's a wellness for the planet and planetary health. And this is where the food and the smart food and vital food is going to play the biggest role. I'm glad that the journal and the team led the smart food initiative I think they came the right time of the where the global food transformation is happening, and at least need someone like that throughout the world, the people leading this kind of the diversified food systems that really helps us transform the entire family farming. They enrich the lives of the smallholder farmers in one side, but simultaneously it's helping the urban elites to get into the better food and the sustainable living. And when you eat the right food and the right kind of the food, and it's really indirectly we're contributing to the global, the planetary health, and reducing the impact on the climate and reducing the global warming in terms of climate change. So, and as I bring back to the core issue of this one, how best we can reach that the large dimension of the people and market systems and all its links together. This is where I call the desegmentations. We bring back to that the last diversity and the recipes, the way we can consume the food, where we can grow. This is where we need to bring back that the geotagging and agrotagging and understand the farm dynamics and identify where the particular food we can grow. That really help us to build a resilient systems. And when we look into the paradigm shifts towards economically viable and ecologically sustainable nutritious productions, and this is require optimizing interventions and recognizing the geographic origin of the food and site-specific interventions. What kind of the food can go where, and that is really become a kind of the base. The basic unit of the sustainable intensifications. And once you've done that, link them to the market, the economics, and where this particular, the food can be consumed and the processed, where the demand is required, and this link to the what's called farm to fork or the farm to plate, and linking the smallholders, the consumer segment. This is where it brings the financial inclusions. This required a functional domains that require integrations in the modular way that leads to the services. This is the evolving areas one we can build the food transformation. So take an example of the food system transformation required in terms of the crop selections, the right crop, right variety, where you can grow that, and that link to the very good, the precision decisions and the farming practices, optimum use of the inputs and resources, because of most of the smallholders, the cost of the cultivation is the inputs in terms of the seeds, fertilizers, and the labor and energy. How best you can optimize that in terms of the designing the right crop in the right locations so that they can produce without any much of the what's called the additional inputs in terms of the pesticide and labor and those things. And only then, not only just selecting the crops and farm practices, but linking all the productions to the market has become one of the vital now, because of sometimes we grow a lot of the food and ask the farmers, okay, there is a demand, you can grow this food, and farmers switch to that particular the new crops and new species and new varieties, and then there is a market demand is not there enough to. When one farmer make a profit, and suddenly there is a lot of farmers follow the same farmer, then there is too much of a demand, and simultaneously we've not created the supply chain meet the demand. So this required holistic approaches to how the post harvesting the market engages so essentials in order to build a smart food systems. It's viable and economically, both ecologically, in terms of the long term the goal. So that's required the quantifying the farming system dynamics, look at it long term, where are those producing, how much the consumptions, and in terms of the resources, fertilizers and market accesses, and where I can target in terms of the context and options, so that if there's a demand for the traditional food in the particular locations, and whether we can grow there, or what kind of the food we can grow there. Also looking into the processing chains and understand dynamics between the farming systems, and measuring the impact and reducing the vulnerability. This all that interlink each other, and this is where I call the unformed dynamics, to understand that what kind of the food I can grow that one, and bring back to the communication technologies that is going to play the important role here. we often do good research and the production mechanisms and everything, but let's bring the awareness to the people, what food they can eat, how they can eat, where they can grow, how they link to that one. We require to understand the entire this precision platform and within the framework of the what you call the mobile-based, ICT-based technologies. And now they are predicted that by 2030, the 90% of the world populations would be using the smartphone. And of course, there's already there is a much ahead of that, the goal, we're probably reaching the soon. And how best you can make use of the communication technologies, how people know where they can buy the food. If the farmers can produce a particular unique food of the requirement for the city, so that people can leave the messages in between. There's machine learning and AI-based crop choices tell that which crop they can grow where, and if you grow farmer produces that one direct link to the consumers. That way, that reduces a lot of the wastage happening that one. This is really the model I really like that in working in Bangalore, few farmers trying that one. They link to the smart foods to the apartment, and apartment say the demand, okay, I need this kind of vegetables tomorrow morning, and farmers harvest only that vegetable, bring that one. There is no wastage of there is no worry about the preservation, storage, and wastage, and while consumers getting the fresh food in the same day. I think this is the future of the systems where we need to bring back the lot of diversity and the awareness. We have to create that. So that leads to the what sustainable intensifications of the monocropping systems dominantly, and still the 80% of the world the production comes from the monocrop based systems, and that is high potential to diversify the systems that help us to build what we call a inclusive farming. Inclusive farming systems is not new, and go back to the traditional systems, whether in Africa, Asia, Americas, everywhere. We used to always look into the demand for the family. You can always put in a small vegetable garden, something that produces nutritious food to feed a family. But the large chunk of the farm, they're producing for the quality, the premium produces. So this is very critical. We have to bring this awareness to the smallholder the settings. So they have to grow the food they required. Simultaneously, they produce the quality food that required for the city, the domestic as well as the international and national, the export quality food produced. And this really required a completely new dimension of the thinking. And how best we can bring that all that, the intercropping systems and multi-crop systems and the interventions of the different crop varieties and germplasm strategies that fit into geographic origin. So we have to identify the geographic origin of the species when it comes to the smart food, because of when a particular food become a demand and everyone started growing that, and the same variety you can grow in one locations, you can produce in different locations, the nutrition will be different. So that geographic origin, site-specific recommendations is very key for achieving this kind of the growth potentials. And I think this is where we need to understand that where the local intelligence and food system transformation required, understand the gaps and quantify that systems. And this is where we move towards the farm stay, and the future of the ecotourism should be revolving around the farming system dynamics. And the family farming is still going to the biggest role. And this is where I think that crop diversifications, bringing the entire the network of the consumer segments to the producer segments together, and in both the value chain is also playing an important role towards, and move away from the single commodity to the component productivity. That is where the future of the food systems play the biggest role. And this is my few the way forward and actions. So we still reforming into the transforming of the food systems at CZ level. And growing healthy food is still a single largest lever to achieve the UN SDGs, because of everything is linked to the healthy food, and healthy food is the smart food. And that required provide equal opportunity for the minor, neglected, underreplaced crops of the superfood values. Because of we always, when it comes to the smart food and superfood, and we are always putting them into in kind of a neglected spaces where they can still thrive, because of barley can grow even in the dry lands, keep it in the dry lands, so irrigated only for the wheat. So this kind of discriminations in the crops should go away. We have to bring the equal opportunity for smart foods to be thrive. And I think that is the future. The food and dynamics is revolving around that kind of the policy level changes. And of course, leverage the digital augmentations and citizen science. I always call citizen science with the farmers, producers, and everyone. That they are the science. They know how to grow the food. Only required is the right amount of the connectivity between them to what they produce, provide the market for them. This certainly required a better communication technologies. How best like the smart food the org. This is what they created the website here in this one. And they're like the often people they wanted to buy the millets and cook but don't know how to cook, and this is where that's providing a lot of the recipes. This is brings the communications and timely the informed decisions and site specifics and community specifications required in order to the gap in every level, whether gaps in the technology, gaps in the digital divide, gaps in the nutrition, and the production dynamics. We need to work in the framework of the inclusive agroecosystems and ecology, the agriculture cannot be separated, and it should be inclusive in nature for the better food and nutrition security with vital crop diversity as a future smart foods. And we have to keep this in mind that inclusion is our future of the farming systems. And let smart food be the core solution for a global health, wellness, and planetary health. Because it is huge potential is there, whether look into we shouldn't rely on everything for the medicine for everything. And nearly like the 70 to 83% of the chronic population's chronic health issues, they are just linked to the not eating the right food. So we have to let the food be our medicines, and smart food should play the future dynamics as well. Thank you very much for these opportunities for the future, the directions where should be leading. And nearly 30% of the world food system will be coming from what you call the future smart food by 2030. So I closed my last slide. The production follows functions. We need to let's leverage the technology, crop diversity, local intelligence to wisdom to build a broken food system for healthy living and planetary health. Thank you very much. I hope so I'm making the time.
Great, yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Chandra. Rich with information as always for you. So Chandra, just some questions and discussion on that too.
Sure.
So you personally have a wealth of information, and your work and your personal interest has driven that. Now, most people don't have that knowledge to be able to make the best decisions. So, and I know you have played a very key role in trying to get those messages out. Of course, you can't do everything around the world, but you're playing your part. In the experiences you've had, what have you found to be most effective in impacting people? And like sometimes you see people, that aha moment, and they click, they get it, and they become converted, or they start to change their lives, because this is about behavior change too. It's not as simple as choosing one apple over another apple. So have you, can you express where you think you've seen people change, and what's really sort of triggering that sometimes?
Yeah, I think the one thing is really the taste of the flavor of the food they eat. When people never exposed to the real food they ever tasted, right? So when I did this one, when I growing a lot of the tomatoes, growing nearly about 63 types of the tomatoes in my home garden, and I gave it to the people, then they tasted the tomato. Oh, it's really different. So flower is so different. How come it's really different? I thought this is because of this different varieties. It's not what you buy in the supermarket. Can I grow this one? Yes, of course you can grow. When the people that ships to this kind of the varieties, they started growing that one. They said, oh my God, this is completely different. And during lockdown time, nearly about 5,000 people, they followed our rooftop garden model, nearly about in 48 countries, they're growing. And see the differences, people, they sending me so much of the comment that when they shift to the gardening and the outdoor life and nature, and started going to farmers and picking there, and they really changed the way their healthy system. They are like number of the hospital visits are reduced. Some people telling me like that, they reduce the consumptions of the medications at least. And this is one side, but other side is the engaging the children into the nature. That's really being the huge diversity, what's called the impact on the people. And that's why I always tell that often we cannot force the children to eat that this one. Let them grow, and when they harvest themselves, that make a big difference. And this is one side. But when the people interact with the farmers, like we do the eco camping, we go to children's with some farmers. The amount of the wealth of the knowledge is the farmers throw when you talk about the crops and crop water requirement. It is amazingly, and you spend that all this requirement, how the local intelligence is so important. Other side. And other one is impact. Really, I saw that when people started exploring the forgotten pulses and millets, and they started cooking those kind of different the varieties and recipes, they see that, oh, this is really like they never knew that one. There's so much of the variety of the food they can cook and eat. But only the still the like impact, I see that in Asia, in India, in Africa, still those local food, the varieties and ingredients can available. But come to the cities, the most of the ingredients is not available. If I want to cook in Egypt, I want to cook in millets. Oh, impossible. I cannot get a single millets, but I can get about 100 variety of the rice, but not a single millet. So
Yeah.
I think this is where required. If we come to the pulses, I see only the lentil. Now at least the green gram coming and the tur coming and the Bengal gram is coming. But other than that, you hardly get any other the legumes. People think means the synonymous with lentils with the legumes. Most people think that everything they put it, oh, it's lentil. No, it's not lentil. So it's a lot of that things. I think this kind of the communications and educating the people, there is there. When there is demand is there, I'm sure that farmers start producing those vegetables and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. But you've got to get that demand there first. But, you know, you started answering this question with a very, very key point, and it was about taste. Now, taste comes in from different angles. It's not as simple as, oh, if it tastes good, it'll sell. First of all, there's an acquired taste. You know, people grow up with a certain acquired taste, and so sometimes change is difficult from that perspective. I noticed in your presentation you had a lot about the kids in there too. So then acquiring and being used to and not having a psychological barrier to different foods is important then approaching kids and from a very young age. And also when you look at product development, I mean, a colleague of mine who worked in a multinational food company, I won't mention which food company, but it didn't matter, it's the same. I mean, he said to me, reality is fat, sugar, and salt sell. And reality is fat, sugar, and salt can make the food taste good, what we think tastes good. And when people are used to those tastes, it's very, very hard to go back, and it's very, very hard to compete with something high in that. And it impacts on our taste buds, it impacts on the body and what it's expecting and used to. And it takes time to change and appreciate different flavors. So that creates more and more challenges for us. And I remember when I lived in Asia, and then later I moved to Italy to live. And in Asia, I was very used to many, many flavors, many spices, and everything having sauces and being very full of flavor. And when I went to Italy, I thought, well, why is it everybody raves about how wonderful Italian food is? There's no taste to it. And it took me 4 years to really adjust my taste, to start to taste the natural flavors of foods and to start to really appreciate it and really enjoy it. So we have so many barriers to overcome in changing this, but and I think every part makes a difference. It's the knowledge, it's understanding the nutrition, it's the taste, etc. And I remember I went to, a couple of years ago, I went to a conference in Australia, which is their biggest annual conference on food for the food industry. And I was absolutely shocked to see that every session, no matter what the topic was for the session, absolutely every session touched on and got into a debate on healthy versus tasty. And there was this amazing impression that it's either or the other, and the two didn't come together. And the challenge that the food industry had for that, which I was just astounded. And I think your example of the tomato is a great example. You know, the average tomato we get in the supermarket in the big cities doesn't have a flavor. Yeah. And others can, and people aren't coming across that commonly. So even just the taste factor has so many challenges in its own right. Sorry, I thought you were going to.
I think so. You are just brought up very few very interesting things here, and the taste versus the healthiness. Of course, there is I agree and disagree in that the aspect. If you look into the most dominant, when it comes to health become issues, and people forget the taste, they switch to the healthy. We shouldn't be wait for until you spoil our health to be go to the bland food. Rather, we need to be so innovative in that. How best you can make the healthy food is tasty. So this is where comes our traditional recipes. The way take any example. My wife is one of the best cooks. She cooks so many different varieties. We try all the different varieties. Something like the kids that think, hey, Mama, so this is from McDonald's. This burger is tasty. Then can you make it like this one with your food? We always take the challenge that one we bring it and they tell that okay, oh Mama, you are the best one, better than the KFC. So is it possible? Only you need to know that how to bring that recipe is one thing. Other things also by eating the spicy food in the dry climate, I cannot adapt the setting to the setting in the temperate climate because of our body needs. It's ecological. That's what I'm calling ecological indicators and geographic indicators. Very vital here. Suppose, for example, I'm eating the very spicy sorghum roti in my place. I cannot eat the same spiciness I'm sitting here in Egypt or in Italy because of the body rhythms and vata pitta kapha. It's so rhythmic with the nature and the environment we are living around. That's why you look into very dry areas, dry climate, and the people used to very spicy. If you go to the more into the hot and dry area, you can eat the more spicy, more chilies because of the capsaicin in the chili. It's bringing the cooling effect into the body. That's why this high dry climate people eat that more. But if you look into the temperate more and more, the same amount of the spices I can eat in my home, I cannot eat it when I'm in America. I was just surprised. What's happening with my body? The same for me. Cook the recipes for me. When I bring there, I cannot resist that one. This is where we have to understand that, so that we cannot bring the pasta I can eat in the driest climate here. That's not fit at all. There's sorghum fit very well there. This is where we need to link into the food system and what's called eat local and be local. That is the concept we always call. Be in Italy, be the Italian. So it shouldn't be take my food to the Italy, I can eat the sorghum roti there in Italy. No, it's not going to work. And unless there is an adaptation happening in your body. And also same thing our gut biome is so diverse. If I ask my children to suddenly shift to something that they're not used to it, and it's required transitions. Our gut biome cannot adapt to the new systems rapidly. This is required a slow transitions other side. And secondly, if we force children, you cannot force children to eat anything else until they have to see that themselves they differentiate which one is good for them, which one is bad. Let them look into study how the nutrition is really impacting them. Then let them grow themselves. This is what I call the school children, the gardens is going to play a huge role into that one. The nature of our human cycle. When the small children is there, they live into in the floor. You first take the small mud and put it in the mouth, and live into the floor, the farm. You go and just jump into in the mud, and this is nature how they build their immunity. But in the sophisticated hygienic conditions, we are avoiding all that the germs as what gut biome entering into our system, and they become so susceptible to everything. Even small virus, they can suscept. Take an example, our kids they never get sick because just living in the nature and eating the natural food. I think this is where what I call communications. We have to bring this awareness. When I'm giving the software geeks like ISRO and the software engineers last time the lecture, I talked with the gut biome and the biodiversity, that many people do not know that. They are very fantastic in programming and coding everything, but they eating what they eating, the Coke and the pizza and burger eating at all. Then they think that my energy level is so low, I sleep, and they keep on the caffeine all the time because they're not eating the healthy food. I searched them, okay, take a bowl of the cereals and millets you can cook at home and eat that one, and you're not required to eat under 8 hours because of insulin level released so slowly in the millets as compared to the refined, the flours and foods. And this is, many people are not aware of that. So if you bring this all together, geographic origins and how to cook, what recipes, whether I can make my recipes more tastier than the what you can buy the salt and sugar induced food. Yes, can be done that in such a nice way. This is where we need to bring the traditional wisdom of the cooking into the
Okay, good. Actually, I'll make a comment before I go on to, there's a question from the audience as well, but you sorry, just checking. Yeah, so you talk about immunity. You can hear me, Chandra?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. You talk about immunity, which is obviously extremely topical right now, and you talk about immunity by exposing yourself and living an environment in varied environments, which of course we're all doing the opposite at the moment, but hopefully not for much longer. And then of course the other way to build immunity is through the food and more nutritious food, and diversity of food as well, and having the whole diversity of all the different micronutrients that your body needs to build immunity. Well, to be healthy, which builds immunity. But I have a specific question from the audience. And so they have asked, they've said you have worked closely with farmers, and to what extent are farmers knowledgeable on the markets and knowledgeable on consumer preferences while considering the varieties? So when they're choosing varieties, are they very aware of markets and consumer?
I think it's very, very very interesting questions. In fact, that has become a very relevant at the present time. When the farmers, like as I said, that if you produce anything, and we always the supermarket and what we call the urban the market economy, they look for the nice looking and fresh looking uniformity. It is the one question was there. Why farmers, they know that farmers, they're doing the wrong, then farmers aware of that one. And they when I met the several farmers, they're growing themselves as a kind of a more traditional varieties, but for market, they're growing the hybrid or whatever the market is required, like uniformity is required. So this is very, very important. Farmers are aware of this one, but now there's if they grow the heirloom varieties and the things, then market people, they're not looking at all the deformed eggplants or chilies. They're not looking nice, the ugly, and there's not much market demand for that one. This is where the awareness is one important side. And also the new farmers, go to the traditional farm one side, the new farmer, there's new generation of the farmers. They also lost all this, the wisdom of the farming. They just go for the mechanized, like a machine-based, whatever the recommended technology. They grow for monocropping and then produce and they're done. But that is where they are losing a lot of the things, because most of that's kind of the farming input cost is nearly about 80%. So hardly make a much profit in that one. If the farmers could talk to these farmers, they're growing both kind of the varieties, some traditional, some like a commercial interest. They're always making the profit because of the selling those traditional variety within the locally. So understanding the consumer segment and market segment is huge difference is there. This is where a lot of this smartphone enabled, the technology coming and startups that started linking the farmers to directly to the market. For take example, a unique brinjal in West Bengal. It's grown. We have to make a certain kind of the biryani. We need to have that brinjal. We cannot replace that brinjal with a hybrid or some brinjal. Then you not get that taste. And there is unique people looking for that brinjal, and often farmers do not know who are the people looking for it. Now they made it like a kind of the phone, and they tell that I have this brinjal. You can leave the WhatsApp message. Other one, they're looking for that one. They connected each other. Then there's a market is established. And one person do that one, that like a spread of the word, and others started growing that. So this is where I saw that, the ICT and mobile-based, the mobile applications really going to play the role, and farmers still preserving the lot of those traditional varieties. If there's provide opportunities, they can bring it back.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see a big advantage, and certainly COVID has impacted this positively. This is at least one positive side, is that there's a lot more local markets and a lot more trying to shorten the value chains and get farmers more direct to the markets, which should help increase then the awareness of what the market wants and the ability to influence the markets as well. But I was really amazed by the statistic you said, Chandra, about 80% of farms globally are monoculture. I thought that was really astounding. And that's impacting on what people eat, particularly in developing countries where what they grow has a major impact in what they eat. And then it's impacting environmentally. And that's a big change that we need to make. That's going to be a huge, massive change to be able to impact on that.
Yeah, this is very true. Like take example of in our own farming, and even small farmers, less than the 2 acres, and they used to grow at least about 30% of their land. They used to grow something else other than what they're selling the market. But now you can go to that one. Most of the smallholder just to go in the one crop, and most of the trees they removed from their farming system. They're used to produce the fruits and nuts. They're gone because of there's always misconception that around the shade they cannot grow much. Of course, that is true in some sense, but what they're not growing within around the tree, but a lot of the things is they yielded in the center of the farm, because a lot of the ecological interactions happens there. This is one side, and the other side is like how you can link that into the system itself. So if you bring them together, I think you can really transform the farming systems.
Yeah, thanks, Chandra. There's another question also from the audience saying that, and I'll let you answer this and then I'll give an example too. They said, can you share any success stories on strengthening seed systems to bring diversity on farm as well as in the plates?
Just to take an example of the Sona Moti wheat, that's like a very, very traditional, the gluten-free and high zinc wheat variety that's used to grow in like a Javai Godi in the past. And now that's like a Punjab farmers through this, the Art of Living Trustee, they bring this variety back to the farmers. And regular variety, they can sell it about 18 rupees a kg, something like that. And this guy is selling this Sona Moti about 180 rupees a kilo. And he sold out entire his production before even harvested. And because of the people understood that this traditional wheat variety has so much of the nutrition and this demand is created. That is like, I give just example of wheat, but same thing, take a brinjal, like there is in the gula, the mota gula, there's like a malnar gula, that's green brinjal, they go for wangi bath. So that's the same story that when people started growing that one, that really increased. Like take this small example, ashwagandha, for example, this is in the COVID time. That is, and the herbs they use for the immunity booster, like that. There's hundreds of the farmers doing, whether take medicinal plants, aromatic plants, and the traditional wheat varieties. Now, you go to Tamil Nadu, I see a lot of example of the black rice. They're taking coming to the mainstreams as well. Same with the ragi and the millets, and they're like people. They're connecting the farmers. Now the small companies, they're processing the millets, they're contacting the farmers. Hey, I need about 10 tons in your village. Can you produce this one? Like in my village, that guy contacting to the few farmers. Okay, you go to the millets, I'll guaranteed market will buy it. He'll buy it and take commission, give to the processing, like a millet processors. Then they directly sell it to that one. Like my friend started the same one. He started producing he's being the doctors, but he left that one and took into millet business. He started millets. Like that, hundreds of the stories, but it still is a very minuscule. That's why you cannot notice them. But if you bring it to like a 1.5 billion people, like just an example of India, and so much of diversity is increasing. And recent example, like from West Bengal, our vegetable the export, it is increased 23 times much higher than this year as compared to the last year itself. that shows that the traditional vegetable gaining the importance in the international market. And even the people that try to grow the same vegetable somewhere else, you cannot get the same taste, the flavor, right? So this is where the gaining the importance coming. Slowly they're taking the gain like other like a farm to phone upstack, the Giovanni and Farm Phone and the Farmers Harvest Network by the couple of my friends they started. They're linking directly from the farmers to the consumers. You can harvest something directly sell to the farmers, making so much of the profit, and the consumers also getting the not organic produce. Always people think that it's too expensive. It's because of this trade within the mediators. But the farmer sells to the direct consumer, it's become even more cheaper. So like that, there is several like success stories I can name for any crops.
Great, thanks. Actually, I'll add a couple of examples there from ICRISAT too. So
Of course, yeah.
This is one of my favorite examples where in eastern Kenya, it was a traditional sorghum and millet growing area because it was a drier, semi-arid area, and that crop was most suitable for that agroecology. And then during difficult economic times, the government gave maize as a free food aid. People got used to eating maize, so they started growing it, but it wasn't the right crop for those drier areas. So the farmers would have their crop survive 1 in 4 years. So 3 and 4 years, they did not have a crop, which is meant no income and probably no food. And that's pretty dramatic, 3 and 4 years without a crop. And yet they kept planting it. So when you ask them why, because it doesn't seem to make sense, it was because someone would come to the farm gate and sell the seed. Someone would come to the farm gate and buy the grain. They know they could sell the grain. They know pretty much what price they would receive. Now, we were trying to get them to go back to sorghum and millet, which is much more suitable for the agroecology, but it wasn't a case of just helping them grow the millets and the sorghum. It was a case of developing the seed system, having that available and the quality seeds. It was then helping develop the markets for it as well, building agribusinesses. It was about showing them that you can cook the same food, the same ugali, and it doesn't matter if you use maize or sorghum, or better still, a combination of it. So we had to develop that whole value chain, starting with that seed system, to make anything effective. And another example of a seed system impacting diversity is Malawi, and this has been done in India and other countries too, but what's become popular is having a revolving seed system. So training and working with farmer groups to grow seed quality for the grain. But what they do is they're given the seed to start with, and then when they grow it, they have to replace what was in the fund. So it's like a revolving fund, and the rest they can sell. So it's helping farmers get that diversity and get the quality seed needed. So they're just some examples that have worked. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure the ICRISAT is doing the fantastic in terms of like bringing back the forgotten food systems. And hats up to you for the initiating the smart food. This is need of the hour, and I really like the definition of the smart food. It's a smart for everyone, smart for the people, smart for the planet. I think this is the way to go. I think there's no other options left with us. We have to go in that way. So,
right.
Thank you very much.
Good. All right. So thanks, Chandra. We'll start to close off here. Any of your final comments that you want to make, and before we leave?
I think so. When I look into the Smart Food Initiative, it's a fantastic, and hats up to the entire the team of you. And the more and more people can exposure to the different variety of the food they can eat, and how best we can build the taste buds, change the taste buds of the urban elites. Not only those are the dominant crop system they're eating, mostly it's like a wheat, corn, and rice and soybean, like a four dominant crops nearly makes 80% of the food supply. And how best to let them know that there is so much of the variety of the food they can eat. That's one thing. and where they can find it, how the value chain can be able to reach. I'm glad to see in Berlin, if I see the bajra in the superstore, I think there's the change we can see.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Chandra. Really interesting listening to you. I